The basis of a lot of our work is first understanding what truly adds value, because you get what you measure, right? And so if you're not measuring the right things, you're not going to drive value. Now, most people measure only performance, and performance is loosely correlated to value. According to our research, performance doesn't necessarily equate to value. Performance, when we measure just performance, it's a backwards metric. We tend to overinflate performance to raise people's morale. We tend to let people off the hook when it comes to performance, and performance we find doesn't drive value. This is a big deal because most of the time we are overrating ourselves when it comes to performance, and that leads to complacency. The other thing that we tend to underrate that has to do with value is how ready we are for the future. We tend to overrate our own readiness, and in fact, we at times aren't even fluent in the now, and we actually believe we're ready for what's next. And so a great part of getting people to add value is, first, you've got to be performing, and we need those metrics. You need people fluent in the now. And then we need to focus even more on, are you ready for what's next? What's your future potential look like? Are you keeping up with what is needed in our marketplace? But the biggest part of your value is how emotionally expensive you are. Personally, what's your hassle factor? What's your freak out quotient? What's your drama quotient? Because I can be a good performer. I can be ready for what's next. I can be doing those pieces of it. But if I'm emotionally expensive, I cancel out more than I bring to the table. When we look at value, we downplay people's their drama quotient, and we overplay their technical skills, their history, their knowledge. And what I'm here to tell you from the research is that is a huge mistake. The people who have competitive advantage today understand that this drama quotient has a multiplier of 3. Let's just do some math. If we measure this on a scale of 1 to 5, if my performance on the scale of 1 to 5, I'm a good, consistent performer. Let's say I'm a 3. I consistently deliver what you guys need. Now, if you try and build my morale through ratings, you're going to pad my ratings a little bit. You're going to tell me I'm a 5. But see, reality, if you quit protecting me from it, will tell me I'm a 3. I'm a New York Times bestseller. Awesome. Maybe I'm a 4 or a 5. Oh, that's right, Daniel Pink, he's been a New York Times bestseller 5 times. Maybe he's a 4, I'm a 3. Oprah, she's never written a book. Never written a book. She's a 5, I'm a 3. See, you can tell me all you want to, I'm a 4 so that you raise my morale. But your job as a leader, if you want to help people get accountable, is quit protecting them from reality. Reality is the best motivator. Natural consequences is the best developer. Because a lot of leaders jump in and they go, don't feel so bad about that. You know, some days are like that. No, reality is what happened, what'd you learn from it, what was your part in that, what can you grab onto and self-reflect about so that you can get more skilled in living in this thing we call reality. We don't protect people from reality. When we did the research, we realized something you already know about drama. Does your drama ever stay self-contained? One comment you made about, well, you know what happened there, didn't you? Such and such didn't hold up their part of the deal. That thing spreads. 83% of the people that you've been telling are top performers, whether they're athletes, whether they're students that work with you that aren't athletes, whether they're your staff, your colleagues, 83% who you've been saying good job actually bring negative value. Their drama erases more than they bring to the table. Variability in life happens, but variability in emotional expense has a lot to do with our skill set. So let's say I have 2 staff members, both have parents that are ill and perhaps on hospice, right? Same situation. A high accountable comes in and says, you know what, I need to let you know I am going through this with my parent. It's a tough time. And so what I would ask you to do is really, if you see anything, don't even question whether you should ask me or not. Feel you have open season on making sure that I don't miss a beat, because I'm not trusting myself completely right now, and I would never want that to affect one of our students or our fans or our donors or our partners on campus. That's a high accountable thing. Low accountable is, hey, by the way, I got stuff going on at home, so I just wanted you to know you can't really count on me for a lot right now. I'm kind of stressed. Do you hear the difference in emotional expensiveness? One is I take accountability, and I'm going to try and move skillfully through this time with my parents so that I'm going to count on my teammates, and I'm going to be accountable. And I'm not going to slack off, but I know that I'm not on my game. And the other one is I just handed you my game. I'm not saying to be subhuman, but what I am saying is that most of the variability that people have in their life is not their life, it's their skillfulness with how they live their life. And emotional expensiveness is counteracted by skillfulness. Now, if you have waste in your programs, how do you try and get rid of waste? We eliminate waste with good processes. The way you eliminate emotional waste is through good mental processes. And I would tell you that accountability is all about teaching people good mental processes to eliminate emotional waste up to 2.5 hours in the workplace. We study personal accountability, and it's a mindset, not a skill set. When we ask accountable people to describe accountability, they said it's a way of thinking, not a way of acting. When we talk to people lower in accountability, they always erred on the side of it's a way of acting. It's a way of thinking. It's a mental process, not a skill set.